Hello, I'm Alexander Quinn, Starseed Navigating the Light, and today I'm very blessed to have the lovely Victoria Reynolds. She is making quite a splash out there in the world at the moment, and she's been on the Nick. How do you pronounce it? I can never say his name.
Um,
Nick
Veniamin,
Vermeulen?
Veniamin.
Nick Venomiyama, yeah. And you've also you've been popping up here, there, and everywhere. So I'm great that you're on today. I mean, we've actually done an interview before, but I like to catch the rising stars before they get really big. Say I got her on first. So now you are an Elohim starseed. I don't come across a lot of those, but you say that they're quite, they're actually more out there than you think. So I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit about that and how you got into this world and then the beings you channel and speak to and stuff like that, and we could just take it from there.
Sure. So this started in about 2009. So 2008, we had the economic crash. I don't know, it affected the whole world, but here in the US, it was particularly bad. And that was what I didn't understand at the time was my personal awakening experience. Sometimes I call it my personal holy shift. At the time, I had no idea that's what it was. It just felt like holy bleep. And I started to recognize after a while, I started calling it my midlife transition, a midlife rebirth. And now looking back, it was actually me going from the caterpillar and into the cocoon, because I've been gestating in this cocoon for about 10 years. And what's interesting is that 2021 has now pulled me out of the cocoon into the full butterfly state. So it's pretty amazing to be here finally after 10 years of cocooning. In 2009, I met a woman I had just joined a group called Toastmasters, and I wanted to learn how to be a professional speaker. I was writing this book about growing up in this polygamist cult that I grew up in. And she told me I was a light worker. I had never heard the term before. And I said, well, what is that? And she said, you'll figure it out. This was Cynthia's answer to everything. You'll figure it out. She told me one time that she knew I was connected enough that spirit would explain things to me that I didn't understand. And she just always empowered me to find the answers for myself.
That's not Cynthia Crawford by any chance, is it?
No, Cynthia Lamb. I'm going to be interviewing her on my show if I can lock her down at some point in the next couple of weeks.
Okay.
I'm actually really excited to go full circle with her, because she was one of my first spiritual teachers. And
just to interrupt quickly, what was the polygamist cult? That sounds fascinating.
Oh, yeah, I was born into a polygamist cult in Montana, teeny tiny little cults. There were only 6 families when I was born. And by the time I left, it was up to 1,000 people.
Wow.
Yeah. Big city of 1,000 people. Very, very, very controlled environment. And so it's interesting because it was a commune. I call it a cult because, and it took me a very, very long time to get to the point where I accepted it as being that, because when you're raised in those, you don't know that you're in one. It was a fundamentalist, very fundamentalist religious commune based on polygamy as the primary belief. In the belief that a man couldn't get to heaven unless he had at least 3 wives.
Wow.
And a woman can't get to heaven unless she lets her husband have at least 3 wives. So that was the prime belief of the entire community. And then we also had our own form of, for lack of a better word, communism. And it's called United Order. So all of the people in the community gave their entire paycheck to the leaders, and then the leaders distributed it how they felt was equal.
Wow.
So I laugh. I always say it's some people were apparently more equal than others, because some people had nicer things than we did. So yeah, that was my childhood. It was a very, very, very confined and controlled environment. I was not allowed to see the outside world. I was told the outside world was evil, and that Gentiles, who were not people who were part of our religion, would attempt to steal my soul because they all worked for the devil. And so the real world was a very terrifying place for me, until I finally got some people call it courage. I called it desperation. It's desperation to get out when I was a teenager. and went out into the world, trying to find myself.
Well, that's a hell of an intro right there. Okay, so welcome to the channel, guys. So, I mean, there's quite a lot of starseeds and light workers out there that I know of. They all have different awakenings, but it's not unusual for light workers or starseeds to be born into a very constricted or something, a situation like that, because some of them go there to have to, and it's their job to break that kind of stuff up. So if they don't break up a system like that, then they get out of it and then teach others against it. And that's all part of the breakdown of systems and all the rest of it. So it's not the first time that I've heard that. So after you came out of that basically like kind of cult kind of setup, how did you kind of blossom into the spiritual person that you are, that's now being interviewed here, there, and everywhere, and channeling beings and having experiences with ETs and everything? I mean, where do you want to start?
Well, when I first left home, I was very suicidal, which I understand is also now looking back, that is also very common with empathics, to have a very difficult, like we intentionally put ourselves in these really difficult environments to work through so that we can then teach the lessons that we learn later on. But because we're empaths, we also tend to take all of that on and deeper than I think a lot of other people do. So I was suicidal for a long time. When I left home, my choice was either to kill myself or to find a way out of the community. So for about the next 5 years, I struggled with suicide, and I stumbled into, well, not really stumbled into, I was invited to what was then called the Centers for, they're now the Centers for Spiritual Living. At the time, it was called the Church of Religious Science. And the way that this friend got me in there, she said that the minister is going to be talking about prosperity, and the minister is a woman. And to me, that was they were complete oxymorons for the way that I grew up, because I was told that A, God didn't want anybody to have money, and B, women weren't allowed to be spiritual teachers. So the little rebellious part of me that was always been a part of me was really curious about, okay, a church with a female minister talking about money, I gotta see this. Although I had kind of told myself I'm never going to step foot in a church again, because I was at that point, it was like once I left the religion, I wanted nothing to do with anything religious of any kind. And so I stepped into this, they rebranded themselves about 10 or 15 years ago as the Centers for Spiritual Living. And in that center, I discovered self-help books. And that started me on a path of self-improvement and a spiritual path. I did, but I didn't make the correlation between spirituality and self-improvement until about 10 years ago, and how interconnected they are. And then I started to understand why my self-improvement books were in a spiritual center. It took me a while to make that correlation. And so, yeah, that was actually the beginning of my spiritual healing. That I didn't have access to therapy because this was the 1980s, and only movie stars went to see therapists because they were considered, shrinks. And yeah, so regular people didn't have access to therapy. I self-therapied through all of these self-help books. And then those went by the wayside once I had kids, and I didn't have a spiritual path at all. I was basically an atheist. Until one day, right after 2008, my kids were really small. And my daughter said to me, "Mommy, some of the kids at school were talking about God." She was 6 years old. And I lost it. I said, "That word is not allowed in my house. Daddy and I don't believe in God." And she started crying. And I realized right there, oh, I got to figure this out, because I was hoping this was a conversation I would never have to navigate in my own home. I thought that the whole God thing would just go by the wayside and I'd never have to deal with it. But then here's my 6-year-old asking me about it. And so I said, you know what? It's not that we don't believe in God, but God for us is more like Mother Nature. And my daughter said, "Oh, okay." Just like she got it. But I call her my spiritual catalyst, because she caused me to start thinking about things that I didn't want to have to think about. So she kind of awakened me into the next path of my spiritual journey. And then she would say things like, Mommy, when I'm asleep, I leave my body and I go play with my angel friends. Again, angel word never used in my house. And she had one of her best friends was a little dragon that she played with in her sleep. His name was Aragon. This cute little 5-6-year-old dragon that she would visit with. And she still gets teary-eyed when she talks about him, because he told her that when she was a little bit older that he couldn't play with her anymore. And so she opened me up to concepts I didn't even know were possible. But part of it's because I was open enough to recognize that kids know things adults don't know. And I remembered as a child having these kinds of crazy ideas, and my parents telling me that it was bad and that it was evil and that it was wrong and that it was the devil. And I refused to do that to my own kids. I wanted to listen to her and see what she had to say about this unseen world that I wasn't able to navigate. And secretly, I was a little jealous, because it was like, wow, that's really cool. You can leave your body. I wish I could do that. So she's my spiritual catalyst. She's now 18 and doing her own thing, but she chose to be in my life to help me remember who I am. That I know for sure.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of parents, a lot of indigos, a lot of first wavers often give birth to more indigos and more crystal children and more rainbow children, and they get more and more, and they come in more and more switched on as you carry on. But I think for your generation, it was the hardest, because there weren't a lot of books on this stuff. We didn't have, you didn't have the internet. There was no like Facebook groups and stuff, and that's why it was so hard for the first wave that came in, because they had like nothing. So then, some of the first wave, it did take their children to like kind of re-click them back on again, and then when they were coming in more awake, and then they were making you realize, hey, I already had all this stuff, but I just need to get back to it. The power is in me, but it's just coming. It's just coming a lot. And before we carry on, and what's really interesting is so many women and a lot of men as well will be the odd one out in their family, and they will really struggle in their family, and they won't understand why, and they will feel like they're the black sheep, and they feel like really alienated or isolated, and they'll either give up marriages or give up they'll give up basically the situation to just move on, or some will actually progress and actually carry on with the whole thing, but then just feel totally isolated. So I think that's what you through and you went through, and there are so many people out there who are going through this, but they don't know where the other people are out there who went through all this kind of stuff, and they're like, where are they? So I mean, I don't know whether you want to talk about that a little bit, because there will be undoubtedly be people watching who they just need to hear the fact that they're not alone. I mean, is that something you can touch on just before we continue?
Absolutely. So growing up, it's so funny, I kind of felt like an alien. So it makes sense now. But growing up in my house, I felt like I did not belong. I was in this family. I was one of 12 kids. Oh, my mom actually had 12 children. Let's not even talk about my dad's other families and all of their kids. But my mom had 12 children, and I was number 5. And I always felt like I did not belong there. And that my siblings didn't want to play with me. They called me a weirdo. They called me freak. I was just a stupid girl. And so I spent most of my time alone. I was always wandering in the woods by myself, and I didn't know I was connecting to spirit, but I actually really liked being in that place. I would walk around in the woods and sing religious songs because there was something about me that wanted to be connected to spirit. And I would ask my parents things that they couldn't explain, spiritual questions that they couldn't explain, because their religion didn't have an explanation for it. And I was just told to shut it off. And that was the devil trying to tempt me into not believing the religion I was growing up with. And yeah, I always felt very alone, which is difficult to explain. People said, well, you had all these siblings, but I felt alone in a house full of people. I actually felt more comfortable outside in the trees by myself than in my own home. So that was growing up. And now looking back, I can see why, because I was very different. I wasn't like everybody else in the family, and being okay with that. And then now, years later, and then getting married and being in my own home with my family, I ran into that again, where when my children were little, my kids are both starseeds. I know that. And actually the term starseed showed up in my life because I was trying to figure out why my kids were so different. I knew what it felt like to grow up being different, but I thought it was just because I was so different than everybody else in this religious group I grew up with. But my kids were both in the special needs label, and I wanted to find out why they were so different. So I started doing research, and that's how I discovered the term starseeds. And I come to find out the reason my kids are so different is because they are. Yeah. They're not like everyone else for a reason. And so then when I realized I could access communicating with my higher self, I tried communicating with their higher selves, and I got really great answers from their higher selves about how to parent them.
That is amazing.
Yeah, it was great. Now, my husband's not spiritual at all, at all. Now, the only advantage of being in a relationship with him, and I think one of the reasons my soul chose him, one, I've been on more than one lifetime with him before. We've played this game together before. He was raised in an environment that was spiritual and not religious. So he had a really, really difficult time trying to understand my having to unpack all of the religious trauma and religious fear from my childhood, because he didn't have any of it. His mom raised him with universal spiritual concepts. So he doesn't have a lot of undoing to do. But he never progressed on that spiritual path. He started with the spirituality his mom taught him, and he never progressed past that. So when I told him that I was becoming more spiritual and I was having these spiritual gifts activated, or rather not even activated, because I was born with them. I was just remembering them, and they're being brought back up again for me to, now that I'm old enough to know how to work with them, to work with them. But he had no concept of that. He's a very 3D kind of guy. And he just couldn't grasp my spiritual path. And what I realized 10 years ago when I told him, I said, I'm starting to outgrow you, and I have this spiritual path that I'm moving on. And he just said, you know what? He said, it's okay for spiritual, just as long as you don't go join some cult.
Again. As long as you don't go
I'm
join
the
another
last
one.
person you need to worry about joining a cult. I've been there, done that.
Okay, yeah, fascinating. It's interesting.
But I didn't allow myself to progress beyond that, because there was a point where when I started talking to him about my spiritual gifts, he told me I wasn't allowed to tell anyone, because he was so embarrassed by my spiritual gifts. So I held myself back for a long time.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's, I don't want to say this, but it is so many people go through this. People would think that this is a very unique story. I mean, it's certainly unique to you, but there are so many starseeds all separated, all going through a similar thing, but they all feel totally alone. So my message to anyone watching this, man or woman, young or old, is you're not alone. Now, unless there's anything else you'd like to add to that, what I would like to touch on is all the ETs you speak to, how you speak to them, who you connect to, what their names are, how you channel them, how you got into channeling them. And if you can just expand on that as much as you can, that'd be lovely.
Okay. So this goes back to, again, the Toastmasters group that I was a part of. I was a part of a group called Agape Toastmasters. And I wanted to learn how to be a public speaker. It was 2009. The economy was awful. I had no money to my name. And so I wanted to learn how to be a public speaker. I joined this club because it was next to nothing to join Toastmasters. And all of the public speaking courses were thousands of dollars to go to. Anyway, weekend event. But it's a place called Agape International Spiritual Center that I don't know why, but I felt like there was something at that center beyond just Toastmasters. I felt like a tug to spirituality pulling me there. And I knew going there, I would learn how to not just be a public speaker, but that I would learn how to be an inspirational speaker. And that's what was calling to me. Well, while I was there, I saw a postcard on the wall for this woman named Deborah Peach. She's still a very good friend of mine. I think I'll interview her at some point as well when she can squeeze some time in for me. And her card was about branding. and it was called Living Light Agency, Branding Your Business. So I wanted to start this new public speaking business. So I called her up and we got together and we were going to talk about branding, and it turned into something completely different. So I met with her on a coincidence, as there are no coincidences. I happened to be in the same part of the city that she was in on the same day, which was 11/1/2010, 11/1/10. And that's when I started seeing numbers. I started seeing numbers in 2010 as well, like 10/10/10. It was a very significant day for me. And then I worked with her for the first time in 11/1/10. And I sat down with her on this couch at the place where she just happened to be and where I just happened to be to talk about branding my business. And she said, she said, I'm hearing that I need to do something completely different with you. She said, I'm hearing that I need to bridge you to your higher self. I had never heard the term higher self, didn't know what a bridge was, didn't know what an activation was. However, I was going down this spiritual pathway, so I was open to understanding what this was. And so she closed her eyes and she brought out some crystals, and she brought out a crystal wand that looked a lot like that. And my potty brain went someplace else with it for a minute. And I was like, okay, people carry those things around in your purse. Okay. So she did this activation with me and bridging me to my higher self. And she said, I don't know if that worked. I've never done this before. I don't know what this is supposed to look like. And so when she opened her eyes, she looked at me and I was crying. And she said, well, apparently something happened. And I said, yeah, I don't know what, but I'm feeling something. And I went home that night and I was in the kitchen with my daughter, and my daughter said, Mommy, sometimes I can be in two places at the same time. And I looked at her and I said, well, that's really cool. I wish I could do that. And then I got this insight that I needed to go take a bath, which I almost never did. I had this, big, beautiful jacuzzi bathtub that I almost never used. I had a 6-year-old and a 3-year-old. What mom has time for a bath? And I'm sitting in the bathtub and I hear this voice. Now, not really a voice. It was an internal voice. It was my voice speaking to me. And I heard this message. I am you in the 4th dimension and our worlds are about to collide.
Oh, that is just sexy. I like that. Can you say
cool?
that again? Can you just say that again?
I am you in the 4th dimension and our worlds are about to collide.
Oh, I like that. Do continue.
So I'm laying in my bathtub and I said to myself, telepathically, internally, who is this? And my voice said back, I am you in the 4th dimension. And I never heard the word dimension. I had an idea, but I didn't know what they were. I thought it was just a sci-fi thing. And my first response was, first I go into a full-on PTSD panic attack, because I grew up being told that Planet X was going to smash into Earth and that all the people were going to die, and it was this end of the world thing. And so first I went into a PTSD response, heart racing and all that. And then I sat there and I calmly reminded myself, wait a minute, if another planet was going to smash into Earth, I think we'd know about it, because we're talking 40 years later. We know things now that we didn't know 40 years ago when I was a little girl in the cult. So I calmed myself down and I said, okay, explain this to me. And my voice said to me, the 4th dimension and the 3rd dimension are going to be converging. And that's all you need to know for now. And then it was gone. So I lay there in the bathtub thinking, oh my gosh, whatever that woman did with me today did something.
Something was activated.
Yeah. I called her the next day and I said, oh my gosh, I had this voice and it was me. And this voice, me, was telling me about the 4th dimension and that it's going to merge with a 3rd dimension. She goes, oh yeah, everybody knows that. I said, well, I didn't know that. So yeah. And so she created a bridge between my physical being and my higher self. And so then all of these messages started streaming in. And And one of the first things that Deborah taught me was spiritual protection, how to protect my consciousness so that nefarious entities couldn't come in on the stream when I was channeling. One of the very first things I learned from her. Because once you open a channel, and if you don't protect your field, then dark entities can hop in the channel and infiltrate the message. So dark messages can also get in with the light if you don't clear and protect the channel. So I'm fortunate she also gave me that right up front. When you call it in, find out who you're communicating with, ask them their name, make sure your channel's protected, and always put yourself in a bubble that nothing can get through. And my friend Cynthia taught me the same thing at the same time. Make sure you've always got a bubble of protection around you so that dark entities can't get in. So the spiritual protection, I was fortunate that I learned that 10 years ago when I first started doing this work. Mm. And then what was really interesting, I would sit on my couch every morning and I'd be writing in my notebook because Deborah told me to get a notebook and start writing down the messages that came in. So I would sit on my couch and I would write down these messages that came in. And every morning I would sit down and this entity named Victoria. Okay, now bear in mind, my birth name is Margaret. So I legally changed my name to Victoria a couple of years ago. Now knowing who I am. And this entity named Victoria kept coming in every morning and she would say to me, I am you, we are one. And I'm like, yeah, I know, in the mind of the universe, we're all one. And then after a couple of months, I was talking to my friend Cynthia and I said something about this entity named Victoria that I channel. And she said, oh, and I had actually started using the name Victoria because I was starting to publish blog posts and I had a website under the name Victoria because my husband told me that I wasn't allowed to tell anyone that I was channeling this entity named Victoria. And I said, well, then is it okay if I change my name to Victoria and then I just teach people the messages that she teaches me without actually telling people that I'm channeling her? He said, yeah, because I don't want you to be a freak like that Esther Hicks. So I wasn't allowed to tell anyone. So I started branding myself using the name Victoria clear back in 2011 for my work, although I didn't take ownership of the name until fairly recently. So what my friend Cynthia said is, oh, so-and-so channels his higher self, but he doesn't use his higher self name like you do. And then that's like the pieces of the puzzle came together. I went, oh my gosh, this person Victoria I'm channeling actually is my higher self. Duh. Finally, it made sense. I thought I was channeling some entity and it was just my higher consciousness coming in, and that my higher consciousness name is Victoria. And I found that out just randomly on the beach one day when I heard a dad calling his daughter Victoria, and it was like at the lightning bolt. It was, oh my gosh, that's my name. And then I remembered all through my life loving the name Victoria. I never loved the name Margaret. It always felt like an alien name to me, that my parents gave me this name that I didn't even like. But the name Victoria always felt like my name, even when I didn't even know why. So yeah, so then I started to take ownership of the truth that I am Victoria. And then I did some research to try to find out who Victoria is and discovered that Victoria is an Elohim, the Elohim of freedom. And that my role on the planet is to restore freedom of humanity. But I didn't come out of the spiritual closet. I kind of have stepped out a couple of times, but I didn't come out across the planet until just a couple of weeks ago in another interview. And I just was like, you know what? If I'm going to come out, I'm just coming all out, and lock the door behind me so I can't go back in. And it is kind of scary to admit that, because the ego is really afraid. You know, I've been murdered numerous times for coming here and helping to free the planet.
Yeah.
And by this, I was told this time was safe, that I'm good this time.
That's right. Well, so many starseeds have been. I had a reading with I have a mentorian. I'm talking absolutely gibberish. I have an Arcturian mentor, and she did a theta healing session on me, and she was telling me, well, you've been hung twice, and you were shot once. You also killed a couple of people in a war, blah, 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 blah. So I had the whole list of all the things that I've gone through. And she said, oh, you got a birthmark down there on your tummy, haven't you? I was like, yeah. She's like, oh, that was something about to do with a previous wound you had. And she was just like going through, just basically talking about me as if she like knew my body back to front. It was absolutely amazing. But yeah, I mean, often with these names, it can be it could be the name from your higher self. It can be the name from previous past lives and things like that. And so there's a lot of things akashically coming through from past lives and incantations, which are coming to the fore, but now we're able to do it. But our DNA is so riddled with fear, a fear of enlightenment, because we were persecuted and killed so many times in an older energy. So now it can be a bit of a struggle for the old soul. Not so much the new souls coming in, the new starseeds, but the older starseeds, the old souls who have been here longer to come out, because it's a bit of a stretch after all that they've been through. So you get a lot of some starseed closets, and they actually know better, and they want to come out. But and then when they do come out, they end up having restructuring their friends big time, because they've been so enclosed by a mindset of people who wanted to teach them that, this is a fearful thing, like your cult. So yeah, I mean, it's totally, in some respects, normal to do that. And then people end up restructuring their lives and getting new families and getting new friends and getting new everything, and leaving everything there behind that didn't resonate with them. And that could be super tough. And that's why some people don't want to come out, because they've built a whole reality around them, which is all 3D. And then they're like, oh my God, if I come out and start talking about this stuff, what, I'm going to have to let go of all this stuff. And some people have to. It's tough. So tell us more about the beings you channel and how many there are, and the names, and when they come in and how they come in, and then we can talk a little bit about the Federation, but we'll come onto that in a bit. If you could start with those things, if you want to.
Okay. So I didn't realize I was channeling other entities until one day I was standing in my bathroom, and this was great. I was standing in my bathroom when I started hearing all these voices all coming in all at once. But before that, the grid around our planet was broken. So I started channeling codes. I was talking to this friend of mine. I was like, oh my gosh, somebody has messed with the codes around our planet. They reversed 2s into 5s. And so what happened is that the guardians that are protecting our planet had no idea how messed up our planet was, because the grid around our planet had been manipulated. And so they weren't seeing clearly. They were actually relying on us as human beings to send our prayers up and ask for help to even begin to see how messed up our reality was. And so the grid around our planet didn't start to get repaired until 2010. Actually, right around later than that, 2012, because we're still seeing that a lot of the 2s were reversed as 5s. So, they look exactly the same. And if you don't know to look for them in a grid, they're almost impossible to see the flip. And so from the guardian perspective, everything here was fine. They couldn't see how messed up things actually were here. And so once those started to get repaired by Einstein's team, by the way, he's one of the most advanced souls in the galaxy and the universe, and his team was going in and repairing the grid. Once that started to happen, all these other energies started coming in, and I was in my bathroom one day and I heard all these different energies come, and I was like, wait, one at a time. I cannot hear you all at once. You guys got to take turns. So that's when other energies started coming in. And then I started asking them who they were and getting very clear about who they were. So one of the first ones that started coming in was Einstein. I found out that his soul and my soul are very good friends. He's actually a very funny guy. And so he started teaching me about the quantum field and how that works. And I have a program called about the 6th dimension, about how to use that for manifesting in our present reality. So he taught me all of that. And then Saint Germain started coming in. But even before that, I would get a visual of me being in this, like a spaceship, and in this room called the council chambers, and there's a round table. And sitting at this round table in the council chambers is Metatron, Mother Mary, Mary Magdalene, Yeshua, Saint Germain,
Some big names.
Melchizedek was the Council of 12. I mean, these are the primary council that have volunteered to protect Earth and to assist Earth and all of her beings through the ascension process. They are the guardians of planet Earth. That's why they're such big names, because they're the primary guardians of the planet. And that I was often invited to stand in this room and communicate and listen to the council meetings. And it took me a very long time until fairly recently to understand why me? Why was I invited to stand on this council? And I finally realized that my higher self is one of them, which is why I've been here so many lifetimes. And my soul's, I don't know, thousands upon thousands of lifetimes. And all the way back to the beginning of intelligent life on this planet. This is how many times my soul has been here. And I was one of the individuals that helped to create the present construct of freedom of choice, which is why I'm allowed to be in that council chamber and sit in on the council meetings, and why I've been allowed to go into what they call the spiritual situation room, which is what Star Wars would call the war room, and which is where they'll get together and plan, like strategically plan what's happening on the planet right now. It's a very, very, very complex game. And that I'm one of them is the reason that I'm allowed to be in that council chamber.
Fascinating.
I thought it was me getting carte blanche access to them, and I realized, oh, that's not it at all. It's not.
Yeah.
I'm actually there because I'm part of the team.
So when you are channeling now, is it more ascended masters, or are you getting more ETs, or a mix of both? And when you do get a mix of the both, is there a difference in the feeling?
I don't usually communicate with ETs. It's almost always just it's the council.
More the council, yeah?
Yeah, it's the Council of Light. Now, I do know that the number of beings that are in our airspace right now is phenomenal. It's like a scene from Star Wars with the thousands of ships and beings that are here assisting us, and they're going to battle on our behalf, because we, in our 3D eyes, we can't see the full scope of what's playing out on our planet. We are relying on these other beings to assist us, because they are multidimensional. They can actually see what's happening on our planet, even though we can't, because our it's like a shield that's been put over our eyes that we can't actually see.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, they can. So there's a whole battle happening on our planet and on our airspace right now between the light beings and the darkness.
Oh yeah. Well, World War III is a spiritual war, and as above, so below. You know, people think it's tough down here with all the things that are going on. There's a hell of a lot going up there right now.
Yeah.
Very, very busy. And you were saying something fascinating before we came on. I don't know whether do you want to carry on with that thread you were just on?
No, you can keep. If there's something that's coming to you, remember, I always set the intention that what's best for all concerned is what comes through. So I have no attachments to any of it.
You were saying something fascinating about the Federation. Now, talk me through that. What you were saying about that, because that's really quite interesting.
Oh, so the Federation of Light has been in our airspace for quite some time. Now, what happened is that there's another federation that calls themselves the Galactic. So there's the Galactic Federation of Light and the Galactic Federation. The issue has been that the term has been hijacked. So a lot of people, when they're tuning in and communicating with the Galactic Federation, don't know that they're actually communicating with the word that's coming in is the Decepticons. That's really funny. The Deceptors. So the deception is so good at what they do, they can actually take on the name of the good ETs, and people don't know that they're channeling the dark ones. Especially if you don't know how to protect your field and ask specifically to only communicate with the highest divine truth, the highest loving truth in that particular entity only. And what someone else had taught me about a year ago is to also ask to see their aura, because the darkness cannot create auras.
Oh, wow. That's interesting. I actually didn't know that.
Yeah, and they also don't know the subtitles. So they can call themselves, for example, when I communicate with Saint Germain, I don't just call him Saint Germain. He comes in and he says, I am Saint Germain, guardian of the light and protector of Earth's ascension. It's a very long subtitle, but he's differentiating that this is in fact who I am. The darkness doesn't know the different subtitles and the roles that these beings are playing. So there's a way to know if you're actually communicating with, in fact, the true entity or the false being who's calling him or herself that particular entity. So one of the issues over the past 10 years is that these two galactic federations and knowing which one is the real one. And so what I was being shown about a year ago was that the true galactic federation was asking that we recognize them under a new name, so that there's a better way of separating themselves from the false one. And so what I was being told is that they were changing their name to the Intergalactic Alliance. And I haven't said that to anyone, but what's interesting is I saw a video yesterday from another person who teaches multidimensional reality, and she called them the same thing. So I was like, yes, somebody else got the message. I'm not the only one. That the reason they changed their name also is that it's not just the Galactic Federation. This is an intergalactic alliance. So there are now forces here, ground forces and also air forces that are not just from our galaxy. Like we have gathered up troops from around the universe that are here to assist us. What I'm hearing right now is the best and the brightest.
The best and the brightest, yeah. I put out a message there about this. I was saying how we basically got only some of the bravest souls decided to come here, because there are lots of there are lots of souls that didn't want to come here during this time and have to put up with all the stuff going on here, and there's nothing wrong with them, but it took the SAS of some of the souls to come down here and go through all this and get killed off and die and get reborn and persecuted and all that stuff to be here. So it's not that we are any more special or any better necessarily than some of the other souls in the other veil, but there are a lot of souls down here who do specialize in the ascension process, who have done it in other places, on other planets, many other times. So we are like the SEAL team coming back down, doing it again somewhere else. And we've done it lots of times in other places. So we are, many of the Starseeds are pros at this ascension thing. So that's why it comes so naturally. And we're doing things that, even while we're awake multidimensionally, that we're not aware of, especially in the astral. But there are even certain tones and codes and things in our facial features and in the words we speak, and which are giving people downloads and whatnot and all kind of stuff. So it's going on in the sleep, in the astral, and in the waking, and it's all kicking off. Yeah, for sure. So I don't know whether you know my friend Michelle Fielding, but she was saying that she's an angelic channeler and angelic contactee and angelic messenger, but as of late she's had all the ETs. She says she sees them in her third eye, and they are literally queuing up outside of her window waiting to say, give the cue to say come in. So there are beings all around us at all times just waiting. I mean, some good, some bad, but I think mostly I think there are more good now than bad ones, because there is Earth has been in quarantine for a little while, both in the astral and in the ET in the ET side of things. So yeah, it's kicking off. It's really, really interesting. And I would just love it if the veil just ripped off quite a bit more. But I think that could drive some people insane, because I know some people who woke up very, very quickly, and then unfortunately the pharmaceutical companies got hold of them and even more nefarious systems and things, and they were having locked up for a week. So I would say, ascend at the rate which is good for you. No, don't do it too quick. There ain't no rush. And I mean, would you concur with all of that?
Well, yeah. So the first contact is going to occur with only beings who are actually ready for that. The taking the veil off and showing people everything that's out there, they've kind of been prepped for it with the Marvels. I actually watched Marvel Infinity Wars and Endgame over the weekend with my daughter, and I was kind of laughing. I was like, oh, that's actually kind of what's happening right now, is the going head to head, the Guardians going head to head with the evil forces, right? And so in a way, we've been prepped for that, but it's still just sci-fi for most people. The idea that that actually is real is beyond the comprehension of most people, because they're only seeing it as entertainment. And so first contact will happen, but it will happen slowly and with individuals who are able to navigate that without fear.
Yeah, I think that's the big problem with a lot of people at the moment. They want it. They want disclosure now, and in some, I would love it now personally, but I don't know if the collective are ready to just have millennia and eons just suddenly in one lifetime, boom, here's the truth all in one go. It could cause more disruption more chaos than actual good. So it's got to be drip fed slowly. No, it's like an addict has got to come off the old 3D drugs slowly, because if you come off cold turkey straight away, you end up hurting yourself. So
right.
Yeah, it's very, very true. And do you have a favorite being that you like to speak to, and do they ever come in at night? Do they ever bother you? Are they like, Whoopi Goldberg in Ghost, when Patrick Swayze is like 39 bottles of beer, 39 bottles of beer, and Whoopi Goldberg's like, just go away, go away. Do you ever have that moment, or is it?
Yeah,
I
love that movie. I don't get visitations at night, and I actually don't dream. And I just now got the answer. I've always asked myself, why in the world don't I dream? And I just now, as you were talking, got the answer.
Tell us.
It's because I physically I'm not here. I don't dream. I sometimes, if I have chocolate before bed, I'll have a nightmare, but I don't. I go to sleep and I wake up, and everything in between is blank. And I think it's because during that sleeping time, I actually leave and go do other things. So my mind is not active playing stuff out. It's just, and I've always been a little bit envious of people who dream, and they always, write down your dreams. None. Zip.
A lot of people also don't have their dreams, or don't have dream recall, because it's safer for them not to, in case they're intercepted, in case other, like the bad guys basically can come in and intercept actually what you're up to in the astral. That's why they get inside in here. So it's safer for some people not to do that, because of the work they're actually doing.
There's nothing. And people think I'm strange because I don't dream, but that would make sense, that there has to be like a complete barrier between the work that I'm doing and my physical vessel.
Yeah. And would you have any messages for going forward for anyone at the moment, or the future, or anything about things going forward?
You know what the message has been very, very clear since the beginning of this year, actually since 12/21/12. So on the 21st of December, that's when we stepped into 5D. The planet is now fully herself in 5D, and she's just throwing off negative entities left and right. There's no room on the Earth field for dark entities. So we're going to start seeing them leave the planet. Now it's called Leave the Planet, but when the message that came in December is that people would disappear, and I had someone who called me out on, they're like, you mean people are just going to evaporate? No, they're going to disappear from their jobs. They're disappearing from the public eye. They're disappearing from the industry. And we're not even going to remember them, or if they do, they're just going to be in history. But a lot of the dark entities on our planet are just going to basically cease to exist. And the demons and the shadow people and all of those are being purged from the planet. So one of the things to share with people is that Ezekiel came here a year ago in December, almost exactly a year ago, actually could even be this week. Ezekiel came in with his time machine. His spaceship is actually a time machine, and he came here specifically to remove dark entities from the planet and to take them elsewhere in his holodeck. So they don't even know they've been moved. They think this, they think they're still playing out the same game, but they're actually not even here anymore.
That's so cool.
Yeah. And so the rest of them are being removed from the planet. Again, a confirmation again, I was told that the disclosure is being dripped for a reason. I was told 10 years ago that the Guardians were controlling how disclosure happened so that it would not create mass hysteria and mass chaos. Because if all of this came out in the open all at once, people would go into complete hysteria. The primary thing is that people's beliefs are what give them a sense of security. And if people's beliefs were immediately stripped from them, they would not be able to handle that. So it has to be slowly uncovered, like slowly tearing off the bandage, right? And slowly the disease gets dug up for people to look at. But if you were just to expose it all at once, human beings wouldn't be able to handle that.
Yeah.
So, and that's why Ascension is a process. Ascension actually started in the 1960s. It's a process for that same reason. If we all just were beamed up, people wouldn't be able to handle that. Because the reality is a process. It's time, right? We have this concept called time for a reason. So the primary message since the beginning of January has been to laser focus on the world we want to create. So the ego wants to get caught up in the storm that's swirling around us. Well, the storm that's swirling around us is fear continually trying to repropagate itself. It's up to us to consciously create the reality that we want to create. And that requires that we pull ourselves out of the storm and focus. If I were creating a new monetary system, what would it look like? If I were creating a new education system, what would it look like? If I were creating a new media system, what would it look like? Or do there even need to be systems? What would the world look like that I am creating? And allow ourselves to laser focus on the vision of the world we want to create, because we are the creators. And as soon as we pull our minds out of the fear-based reality that's trying to be fed to us, and we focus on the love-based reality we're creating, the faster we'll be able to create that. And so I don't follow the news. I don't see the storm that's swirling around us, because I know that's not where my energy is being called to. My energy is being called to creating. And so, which is why all of us who have these media channels, the other thing I was being told a couple of months ago is every person who has the ability to have their voices heard, make them heard. Get a YouTube channel, start writing blogs, everything. And then all that needs to be focused on the world we want to create. It's no longer our job to expose the darkness. I was told that now that is in the hands of the authorities. The military is going to be taking care of exposing what needs to be exposed. And it's not all going to get exposed. Oh, the only thing that's going to get exposed is what's necessary for humanity to wake up. But the depth and the width of the corruption on our planet would destroy the hearts of human beings. And our heart is our most powerful weapon, is the word I'm hearing, but it's not that other kind of weapon. The heart light is our greatest resource. That's what we create from. But if our heart is destroyed by seeing too much of the corruption that's happened on the planet, our hearts won't work properly.
That's true. Yeah, so, I mean, I've also heard and seen this. You know, our heart is our greatest weapon, but it's also can be our greatest vulnerability, because what a lot of the cabal and the system and the 3D rulers of the world wanted to do was make you. So, for example, they will make you fall in love with a celebrity, or they'll make you fall in love with, like, say, Michael Jackson, and then they'll make you believe, oh, all of that love, all of that magic that you thought you had, actually that guy's a pedophile, or actually that guy is this, or what, you know. And then there were people that actually weren't. Mm-hmm. So, you know, they love to build your heart up, then to crush it. That's what they also did. So we have to be very, very careful how we use it as well. So there are a lot of people that we loved, places, things that they built up, and then they took it away, they crushed it, said it was evil and bad when it wasn't. but because it's so mixed up with all the other bad stuff, it's very hard to decipher which ones are and which ones aren't. But that's starting to get easier now. So, like you're saying, the heart is one of our biggest weapons, but it's also been used against us, to crush the human heart.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why we've been controllable. And I've also heard that, I go to Glastonbury quite a lot, and Glastonbury and Avonbury, which is the heart chakra of Earth. But did a lot of people know that actually Earth is the heart chakra of this galaxy?
So, I did not know that, and it makes perfect sense. She has a beautiful heart.
Yeah. So that's why a lot of dark forces want to come here, because it also, if they can shut her up, then the heart energy that is reverberating out into other parts of the galaxy gets slowed down, and then they can perpetrate other, surrounding areas and stuff. It sounds crazy, but this is some of the very deep intel that I've been told over the years. I don't actually often talk about it because it doesn't often come to mind, but we get so caught up in what's just happening in our little Earth sphere. Well, what's happening here is affecting places many light years away.
Yeah, I got that message a couple of years ago, and you're confirming that. What I was told years ago is that what happens on Earth affects the entire galaxy and beyond. Yeah. That now, knowing that Earth is the heart of the galaxy, explains why. Yeah. Which is why everyone in the galaxy is here on this rescue mission.
And there's I know for a fact the Andromedans there's something, I think I remember Alex Collier talking about, that the Andromedans had to come back in time to our future 300 or 400 years in our future from our now, because there was something that they have put right, but where basically AI was so bred into us biologically that we actually became not humanoid anymore. We were like machines. Mm-hmm. So we lost we lost creator source contact, and Ascension kind of went really, really wrong. So and it affected something that happened in the Andromeda galaxy. So
interesting.
Yeah, so there are lots of different interests and reasons why they need things to happen here. Also, of course, Earth is also a massive trading point. So a lot of ETs come here, stop off here, trade off. Genetic material is dumped or traded off before they go off into other places. So there's a lot of different reasons for being here, and mostly all the good guys now are, as you say, are all banding together. But there's a lot of reasons for a lot of, even the neutral ones, for wanting to make this place work. So it's very interesting.
Well, there's a lot of, and I've been told this before, and what I'm hearing again is, if Earth can pull this off, what it does for the rest of the galaxy of being able to prove what's possible.
Yeah, and that's why all eyes, galactic, angelic, creator source itself, all eyes are on us right now, because we're the new kids on the block. In our galaxy, we are the newest. So there's a lot of planets out there which are a little bit, even if they're just slightly ahead of us, but we are the newest kids on the block, and we've got one of the biggest tasks. So all eyes are here. Mm-hmm. So it's a great time. I don't have any more questions for today. If there's nothing else, if there's anything else you want to add, is there anything else you want to add?
Anything else I want to add? I do want to add to just trust yourself, not you, but to every person who's watching. Trust yourself, because every single one of us has within us the capability to make this new Earth happen. And that the people who are watching this, they're watching this because of there's a spark that's inside of them that wants to be a part of creating this new reality. And this is about learning to trust that spark that's inside of every single one of us, that yes, this is the path that we're on. This is the reason we came here. And, in the past, there have just been a few starseeds here and there, but the mass number of starseeds on the planet right now, we're in the millions. And our role is to change the entire collective, it's interesting, I'm hearing the entire collective mind, and to change the entire collective heart. And to trust that that's the reason that we're here, and to not be afraid, because there are so many of us now. We don't have to worry this time about being strung up or shot or throat slit or any of that, because we're here in mass and we're going to do this. It's already been written in the stars that we succeed. We just need to believe that in ourselves.
That's beautiful.
And not get caught up in the false narrative that it's not possible.
Victoria, I'd like to thank you very much for today. This was a very beautiful interview. The energy was very nice. Feel very calm and relaxed. I hope everyone watching this is feeling nice and calm and relaxed wherever you are. Take a nice deep breath and feel good. The future is looking good. I want to thank you again for today. And it's been really magical. And I will put the links. You'll get afterwards. Give me all the links. I'll put all your relevant links and your work and everything you do and your coaching and whatnot. And if you're selling T-shirts and mugs and maybe underwear with your face on it, and I'm only joking.
Nothing that crazy.
it'll all be down there. So thank you again, and God bless. And I'm Alexander Quinn, and you've been Victoria Reynolds, and it's been magical. Thank you.
Thank you.